And yeah, here we go. Okay,
Okay,
okay, okay, okay, okay. What's good, bro? How you doing, man?
pretty good.
Cool,
Looks like
cool.
the world's on the brink of nuclear war. Let's talk about comic books.
Oh yeah, feels good. Although I feel like we've been at that point for God knows how long.
And how many times? Like, how many times is like World War III trending on Twitter?
Yeah. It's weird going back to like Watchmen. Because I was thinking that a couple of months ago when I was doing my Ultimates retrospectives.
Yeah,
Um, Holy shit, we've been on the brink of like nuclear annihilation for close to like 35 years now.
yeah,
We've actually
yeah.
even longer because the Cuban Missile Crisis was like, I don't know. It's one of those weird things that we don't forget, but we also forget in like a modern context of World War III conversations.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
always fun stuff.
Th-
Speaking of fun
this
stuff,
one is
yeah. Oh, good.
particularly weird because of how like completely, completely like at least with Soleimani, it kind of felt scary. But this feels like nothing is happening at all. But like there's a bunch of troops on Ukraine's border, and there's a bunch of American troops, and a bunch of Russian troops, and like they're all fucking ready for crazy shit to go down. You know?
Yeah, it's like we're edging ourselves to the brink of destruction, quite literally and
Yeah,
figuratively. Feels good. Uh,
yeah.
Speaking of though, um, major controversies, political and otherwise. Let's talk about some controversies with comics.
Right.
Have you ever heard of that term? Did I like ever say controversies in front of you? Like,
Yeah, yesterday.
okay, oh, I did.
Yeah.
God, yeah, no, my brain's not fried at all.
You're good.
It's totally not the beginning of the semester. It's all good. But
All
yeah,
good.
so first of all, sorry, where are my manners? I am the Mystical Green Beanie. You guys already know who I am. I don't really feel like I need an introduction, but this is JackJenocide. Jack, tell us about yourself.
I am a comic book fan, a writer. Occasionally make some music and stuff, and talk about politics on Instagram, um, and just otherwise, ordinary dude. Works a regular job and shit.
You're just a regular, everyday, normal motherfucker,
Yeah,
just like the rest of us. Great,
right.
great vibes, great song. Was that a great song? I don't remember. I just remember singing that a bunch of times in like the fifth grade or whatever.
Not sure.
But yeah, Jack actually brought this up to me a couple of weeks ago when we were thinking of collabing.
Yeah,
Uh, hmm?
yeah. You
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. Well, cause you I was at the at our local comic shop, Alliance Comics, um, and you were talking about how we should get together and talk about tribalism in comics, and uh, as we were kind of talking about it in our conversation at the time, it was more so like the Church of Marvel, and
Right.
like there's a lot of social currency there with what's hip and what's trendy and what you are allowed to like or allowed
Yeah.
to at least say what you like. Um, but as we kind of talked about that topic over the past couple of weeks, this also kind of
Hmm.
like spiraled into it's not just Marvel; it's like other things too,
Oh,
with other
definitely.
fandoms, and even like within the churches, there's like denominations, kind
Yeah.
of where like there's the Church of Marvel, but within the Church of Marvel, there's like the denomination of okay, but are you a Marvel comics fan or a Marvel movie fan or a Marvel games
Yeah.
fan or like that kind of thing, and like the stuff that you can say and maybe shouldn't say or like is taboo to say. Um,
Right.
uh, but like there's
Yeah.
like always that like weird tribalism for at the end of the day what equates to actually not equates to what is IP for like 5 year olds that Disney and Warner Brothers and all these other like major corporations can like slap on backpacks that like
Yeah.
adults care very much about.
Right. Right.
So yeah, let's just
Yeah,
kind of get right into
like
that.
Warhammer or Pokemon or Dragon Ball Z or any of these things, they all have a similar thing. And like Warhammer, it's particularly extreme and politicized. And there's like the right wing Warhammer people and the left wing Warhammer people, and like the people that say that Warhammer's fascist, and all this like. But like, I think there's something singular about Marvel right now at this particular moment where it has become universal in the mainstream, like similar to what happened to Harry Potter, where like
Yeah.
all these kids grew up with it, all these parents read it to their kids. It suddenly became this like allegory for like all things liberal in America. Kind of Game of Thrones did a similar thing, but I feel like Marvel, it's so accessible, it's so easy to just get anyone of any age to watch a Marvel movie. Not anyone, but like a wide range of people to watch these things and identify with them, and to get into the continuity. And that's created a kind of a division between the people who are like just now getting into the continuity, but they feel like some kind of weird ownership over it, versus the people who like probably should have gate kept them and now are suffering the consequences of having all these sort of normies in on it. And so I think we're in like a particular we're in a new phase of it. Not like, not to go into the Marvel Phase 5 or whatever stuff, but like we're in a new phase where it's like post Infinity War, where like it's kind of getting old, but at the same time people kind of also care about it more than ever, even though it's like I can't, I just watched Eternals, and Eternals was really interesting in some ways, but the elements that were, repeating from other Marvel movies were like particularly cringe, because it was like, oh, this is, they've already played this out, we've already punched the bad guy a bunch of times, and
Yeah.
I can't keep watching that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Although I'm curious about that. Actually, I've never talked about the Eternals on my channel yet, so this is gonna be a great time to talk about that. But
Yes, let's
um,
do it. Let's.
and we talked a little bit about the Eternals privately, but um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I hear what you're saying about like good guy punch bad guy and how that gets boring over time.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess for me at least, with my like view of it, well, first of all, I went in very indifferent. I know like the internet was
Yeah.
like bitching and moaning about it because women, and like you I was gonna like say other words, but like I'm probably not gonna risk
Okay.
the wrath of
Okay.
YouTube. But no, like just people were freaking out about it, and I went into it thinking it's another post Endgame Marvel thing, and I was
Yeah.
pleasantly surprised.
Me too,
It
in
felt
a
like
lot
a
of ways.
movie with like a story and characters
Yeah.
that I could care about.
Yes, the world building in the middle. Yeah, I my problems were mostly with the third act. I thought the second act was like really good with world building and with kind of doing something different. Like it just felt like it was in the Marvel universe, but it was on kind of the fringes of the Marvel universe. But at the same time, still epic, even maybe more epic than a lot of the other stuff they've done. Yeah, I think all the references um, to Earth X were great and were really interesting, and sort of like solidifying that Earth X is canon for the MCU. Pretty much, like with some changes. That was really a cool surprise. Yeah, generally, like I thought if they could do more stuff building off of this, that would be exactly what I want from Marvel. Um, it was just like in the form. We've talked about this before, that like there's sort of a storytelling form of like you have all these complex ideas, and then you punch the bad guy in the end.
Yeah,
And like I'm usually pretty fine with that. I've just gotten to a point now where I've seen, like, I feel like I've exhausted that, and I need something more like Earth X, or something more like a Warren Ellis story, or something like that, where it's like you got a little bit more going on than
how
that.
dare you use the name of the disgraced
Right, of
Warren
course.
Ellis. that toxic
Yes.
personality. God,
Yes.
that's a. I'm not sure if you're like caught up on The Boys yet, but that's like a big thing in The Boys.
Oh, with what?
When I like made fun of like Warren Ellis saying like he's a toxic personality, that's like the was it like the Church of the Collective, I think? Or,
Oh,
like, the
right. Yeah.
Scientologist in The Boys, where it's
Yeah.
like if you're
Yeah.
canceled, like they call you a toxic personality and like your career's
Right.
destroyed.
Yep.
Yeah. But no, I definitely hear what you're saying. And I agree with you. I think a large part of the reason why I don't necessarily have a problem with like punchy fight in like
Right.
cape shit stuff is that I kind of just expect that in
Oh,
all these
same. Yeah.
things.
Yeah. I get that.
Um,
Yeah. It was just like an endurance thing. It was like, oh shit, this is 3 hours, and then
yeah,
do the
and
same. Like, you know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Well, no, I totally get that. Like, and I've made this point. Like, what do we expect from these fucking superhero movies? Like, what are we? Why are we expecting like Shakespeare? And that itself ties into this whole thing of the Church of Marvel. That it's being, people are writing articles like, Endgame is Marvel's Iliad
oh
and stuff
Jesus,
like that. And it's like the reason they're writing that is we don't have an Iliad. We don't really care about literature. Literature is just another place for like woke stuff to play itself out and like people to talk about my trauma and like all that crap. It's like, so we don't care about literature, we don't care about poetry, we don't care about culture. So we take the low culture stuff and we elevate it, and then we just sort of LARP that it's as good as something like the Iliad and as complex. And like it just isn't. It just like isn't. And some of that is the gatekeeping too, because like this was stuff that theoretically people didn't fucking read in ancient Greece. Like it was the elite that read and that knew about all this stuff. And now it's like, we have a much cheaper version of that that's like for everybody. And what do we expect? I don't. So I guess I should. It was that Eternals got so good in the middle that I expected it to do something else, and then when it didn't, that was disappointing. But like if I had just gone in with like typical expectations of a superhero movie, it was a fine superhero movie, definitely.
yeah. And I like that you kind of brought up the high culture, low culture comparison, because that is something that I definitely agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And not to like not comics or anything like that. I definitely think low culture has its merits.
Yeah,
Just like I think high culture has its demerits.
yeah,
In the sense that, prime example, we talk about what's high culture versus what's low culture.
yeah.
Novels, for example, the book industry, that's still considered like high culture, like literature, but that is a shrinking niche because everyone's gatekeeped it, like not gatekeeped it, but like they've gatekept that medium so well,
Right.
or so effectively, that nobody really cares about what's on, like the bestsellers list, or like your next
Yeah.
like big espionage novel, like your next big like white people in America, like I have trauma kind of book.
Right.
Like
Right.
no one really cares anymore,
Or non-white people.
because it's not as accessible.
Right.
So that's like a example of like, a disadvantage that like high culture kind of has, whereas low culture is more accessible to the common man, and anyone can kind of like jump into it. But that in and of itself is kind of a drawback where anyone can get into it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how you run into weird problems where I was like literally just on the Superman subreddit a couple hours ago, and just the level of like pure racism is like staggering. But like because
Yeah.
Superman's a character for like everyone, he's a comic book character and he's very accessible. Well, you're gonna get everybody.
Right.
You're gonna bring in everybody.
And also, I think the reaction with all of this woke stuff, unless you like put all the racists in jail, they're just going to be more, more angry, more aggressive, and on any platform where they can say racist stuff, they're going to say it more aggressively. On here in the comment section, on 4chan, to some degree on Twitter. They don't, the ones who haven't been censored yet, and whatever new platform comes, as long as they're sort of, especially having these corporations that are like associated with anti-racism, there's gonna, and censorship. There's gonna be people that try to just push back against that with like the most outrageous stuff they can say, pretty much.
Yeah, no, totally. And this is kind of where we get into like the whole that like church mentality,
right?
Or I guess like the precursor of like what this like church mentality is,
Mm-hmm.
Because we often talk about, or not we, but like in general we talk about comics as a community, and that's often like executed in the form of churches in a way, or like just like religious practices, which I think is very ironic, considering that, especially in the West, with superheroes being primarily a Western, or I guess more specifically an American fixture in pop culture, that institution's kind of taking on more of a religious face as traditional religion is on the decline.
Right.
So it's just kind of hilarious to see.
Yeah. Well, and with Comicsgate versus anti-Comicsgate, there is that is one of the specters I think that floats around it, with like, your boy Zach having a video being like, it's okay to say Christmas. You don't have to say Happy Holidays. You can say Merry Christmas. And Ethan Van Sciver has videos where he talks about Jesus and stuff like. I don't even know if he's religious, but he's just sort of saying like, it like he ends up on the side of the Christians. And then there's other people that are within Marvel Comics and like on Twitter and stuff trying to say like religious inclusion and talk about the evils of Christianity and the evils of the past. And it's like why is this coming up when we're talking about comic books, where it's like
Right.
these are imaginary characters that exist in a world where humans were created by the Celestials that are evil space gods. Like, what does that have to do with Christianity?
Exactly. And there's also a level of well, before I go into that, I want to say like I understand the temptation when writing comics, because I write comics myself, as you know too. But there's a temptation to, not just temptation, but like it's natural to pull from what you know. So you're actually going to look at the world outside your window and say, okay, what has affected me today? I'm an American. Statistically speaking, I probably hate Christians. Because that's just, well, not hate, but like just it's kind of popular now to like bash on Christianity as it is in like the American egalitarian form, because we live in a post Fox News, post Satanic Panic, post like war on religion, debating these kinds of things on like Tucker Carlson shows, kind of world now. That like it's become less taboo to like say that kind of stuff. Although it's become increasingly more taboo to like say anything bad about any other religion. I think it's fascinating. But going back to pulling from what you know, it's weird when people kind of do that within the context of comics, because that completely ignores world building. Going off what you were saying earlier, like the Eternals, well, not the Eternals, the Celestials are like these evil, like Lovecraftian kind of gods that birth life throughout the cosmos and then just kill it because that's just the nature of their birth.
And that's what that movie hit so hard. It was like this cold, mechanical, scientific process that is indifferent to human life and will ultimately destroy it.
Yeah,
like that's the gods of the Marvel universe. Like that is dark. That's super dark, versus like Jesus loves you. And that's that's I think that's where I don't know that that's the way that the universe works or anything like that, but that's definitely that's the type of perception that I think a lot of people have with science and like sort of scientific materialism. Um, there's I don't want to get into like a whole philosophical thing, but like the philosopher Nick Land, and he's building off of Nietzsche. Nick Land talks about how the death of God, is what breeds cults. That like UFO cults, theosophy, New Age, hippies, all this stuff. It comes out of the death of God. The death of God is this sort of like it's a neutralizing thing, but it's also this active thing where all of a sudden you're thrown into a position where you have to like make something new up because daddy God is dead, and like the order around you has sort of dissolved. And I think that's what this cult of Marvel is. That's what the cult of DC is. That's what the cult of Warhammer. All of this is like trying to make sense of a godless world. Even if you believe in God, it's not as easy, and you don't have as much of a collective. Like, even the churches that do exist, they're not normal the way that they were normal 100 years ago. It's not normal to go to church in that way. It's not. It's like, oh, you go to church. Oh, you pray. It's when somebody is very, very active in their faith, it's like this weird, novel thing now.
Yeah.
Whereas being an atheist used to be weird. Now it's not. Now it's almost the opposite.
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting. And that gets into like a different debate that I also think is fascinating, but I'm like in no way like prepared to get into that material right now.
Okay.
Or at the very least on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to make a bigger fool of myself than I already do on like
All right.
daily basis on this platform. But yeah, no, I think that whole thing is well, the pragmatist in me is like fascinated by it because I'm interested to see where that all goes. Despite I feeling I think I kind of already know where that's gonna go. But I don't know. It is scary. Because, and I'm sure you've seen it. Because I remember back when I used to work at Alliance, there was a lot of people. Granted, the store was in a major metropolitan area, very liberal area. So naturally, a lot of the clientele were atheists. But I remember having one conversation with one of the clients there about X of Swords, not a Way of X, I think it was, which I'm not sure if that ever came out or not. But that was the whole Hickman book about the X-Men finding their own religion.
That did come out, yeah.
Okay, cool. Just got buried under like a myriad of like 500 other X-Men titles.
Right.
But I remember having this conversation with this individual, and he was talking about how it's silly to kind of approach that concept or subject matter when most comic book fans are atheists anyways, which kind of made me think, well, I don't know how atheist comic book fans really are when,
right,
comparing my very religious upbringing, because my mother's a minister.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the church a lot, but a lot of the same behaviors I see in the church, or I did see in the church, mirror comic book fans and fandom.
Yeah.
Like if you go into like any nerd's home, you can kind of compare it to like the neighborhood abuela's house. Where there's a picture of like Roman Catholic Jesus as soon as you open the door. Well, now there's a picture of like the Avengers. And,
right.
Sometimes there's like a shrine to like where you lay out your Bible, or sometimes for people who are Jewish, they lay out their Torah.
Yeah.
Instead, there's a bookshelf of omnibuy, or
right.
like, an omnibus that's like open. So like it's very similar. And even like how people cite like religious texts at gatherings. You go to Comic-Con,
Right.
it's the same way. People are like debating not debating, but like they're regaling the tales of the X-Men going against Apocalypse,
Yep.
or Batman fighting the Joker, in the same way that they would talk about or the same way that like people who are religious would talk about the temptation of Christ, or
Right.
you know, the story of Delilah and Samson. So it's very, the behaviors are very similar.
But there's a level of enjoyment that I think is different or more seductive in a way. Or I would distinguish it from Christian seriousness and like respect of the Bible and all that sort of stuff. Like the stories in the Bible are enjoyable, but we don't consume them the same way we consume a comic, you know? But like it's kind of like a pagan enjoyment, like the way people worship Dionysus is kind of like the way that people worship a Marvel character. It's like people take mushrooms and go see Avengers and stuff like that, in a way that's kind of similar to the way that people would, you know, trip and like go. Not to say everybody trips and sees Avengers, but that is a thing. Like, you know, people watch Aquaman and stuff like that, and like, you know, it's similar to the revelers of Dionysus that would like get wasted and have orgies in Greece. Especially like the low cult, like the decadent period of the Dionysian cult was like, you know, just totally just drugged out and like, but it was all about like the seduction of the god. And I think that these gods, you know, if we want to call the Avengers gods, are very seductive. They lure us in from when we're kids. It's just like these fun, you know, colorful adventures to escape into. And then the inner content is kind of like subtly, you know, we subtly get brought and indoctrinated into the, you know, the kind of more sinister side of this, where it's like, oh, actually, it's about American imperialism, or it's about how you should only vote for this candidate, or you're a bad person, or you know, these groups are good and these groups are bad, or you know, whatever it may be, like whatever the ideological content may be, is a more subtle side that comes after the sort of ice cream of, you know, good guy punches bad guy.
Yeah. I it's interesting. I agree with you in that sense. On like a normie basis.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have seen a lot more of the cult-like mentality surrounding the moralization of how you should like characters. In a way.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, I'm not denying that at all. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've and even I've been like guilty of it too. So I've had to like had that like voice in my head that like pulls me back and says, "Hey, just have a little self-awareness. It's paper people.
Yeah.
They're colorful drawings on a page. It's fine." But people do get very up in arms about the right version of a character,
Right.
and how if you don't like a character the right way, or you engage with the character the wrong way, well, then you're a bad person. You know.
Well, I think you have a really good approach to comics. I was thinking about. I wanted to bring this up from like, not to like kiss your ass or whatever, but like I think that you don't take yourself too seriously, but you do take comics seriously. You do take, and you know, you kind of get the opposite of that with a lot of these fans, where it's like, oh, it's just you know, it's just cape shit or whatever. But then they like, but I am the arbiter of Superman. I am the true, you know, and like this kind of very cringe. Like I was talking about this yesterday. Like somebody was saying on a stream that like Ethan Ralph is like the funniest he's like the new Chris Chan of the internet, because he takes himself so seriously that, you know, anyone can just watch him and laugh. And if you don't know who Ethan Ralph is, like, don't find out. Like, it's not don't find out. But like, yeah, he's a YouTuber, and like he's hilarious
the
because he's like
review guy.
He's like a right-wing extremist.
Oh,
dude.
never mind. All right, wrong guy.
He's like I think the kill stream. But like he's hilarious because he takes himself so seriously, and that's how these fans are. Like they're just completely like, I've been reading this my whole life, and I know the real, truth about the Avengers or whatever. But also, they talk like Joss Whedon. They talk like Joss Whedon characters. They talk like Valley Girls and in '90s California,
Yeah.
and like but then they have this like reverence where it's like your opinion can't possibly have any validity to it because you didn't read issue 373 of Uncanny X-Men or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like, so I like the inversion of that you have where you kind of like are irreverent about being a fan, but you also care about the material and you don't want this kind of like BS Bendis style dialogue where it's like making fun of you for caring about it.
Thanks, man. I try. Because Lord knows I was not like that for a long time.
Okay, well that's probably why it's full of wisdom.
Yeah, no. Me in high school was a very different
wisdom
story.
is
But
enough to know which way to not go. So
yeah, but yeah, it's kind of interesting to bring up the whole like, Joss Whedon Bendis like irreverence or like ironic irreverence for characters and whatnot, which kind of like branches off into another topic that I also think we could get into, about the cult like mentality behind like my side versus your side, but you brought something up that I thought was very fascinating, and I will kiss your ass about this because that was a great point you brought up, about I think you were citing Zizek.
Oh, that was Land, I think.
Oh, okay.
And Nietzsche.
Specifically we were talking about Kung Fu Panda and how.
Oh no, that was Zizek. I'm sorry, that was Zizek. Yeah.
Well, and how there's just like weird. I don't want to call it like a contradiction, but it might be a contradiction. Contradiction might be the right word. I was gonna try to say something like use like a different word from like the annals of my vocabulary, but like contradiction is a good word. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Where there's this notion of not taking the material too seriously, like everything has to be undercut by a joke, or like belittle the characters because it's capes and tights and it's all silly. But at the same time, they want you to take it deathly seriously.
Right.
To the point where it is comparable to like the Iliad and the Odyssey and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, well, no. Like I'm not gonna. Like it's hard to take something like Age of Ultron. I have a weird relationship with that movie in particular because I love a lot of the ideas in it, but Joss Whedon's all over it because he can't help himself.
Right.
That is a different connotation now, saying he Joss Whedon all over it.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, like that movie is filled with a lot of like really interesting ideas about artificial intelligence and parents and their children and those feelings of being irrelevant once your children kind of surpass you, but you also want your children to surpass you. I think that movie is fascinating.
Tells that the right way is the last Avengers story, which I was recommending it to you.
Yeah, you were.
Like about like Hank Pym and Vision and Ultron as like grandpa, father, and son, basically, and
exactly.
Like their like edible struggle with each other, and it's really cool and it's not stupid. It's just Peter David like at his best, and that's what you should read if Age of Ultron disappoints you. Yeah,
but then now we're comparing Peter David to like Joss Whedon. That's just not fair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But like even then, like that's my clear frustration with that movie. And a lot of the Marvel stuff inherently, and the DC stuff too. But since Marvel's kind of like not just the popular one, but like the one that kind of is more known for undercutting everything with humor.
Right.
It's frustrating because I want to take that movie seriously, like very badly every time I watch it, but it's still stuff just it wants me to take it seriously, but it also doesn't want me to take it seriously. So then I'm just left with like this weird conflicting feeling of, well, why do I care?
Right.
You know, like,
and well, I really I also, I don't know if you ever like reach the levels of like masochism that I have attained in my enlightenment. Like watch all of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because like you see it, and you see the way, you see the kind of brilliance of Joss Whedon, but like also how he constantly is getting in his own way, because he has like great world building, he has pretty good complex characters, and that's only that show, like it's the only time he's ever done that, but like but he undercuts it with like all this really juvenile humor, and then this kind of like nerdy, like superior referential humor, and yeah, it just gets really kind of lame in places where it doesn't really have to. It could have been a much better show than it was, but like yeah, it's doing the same kind of thing, like the show Angel. It's about like this evil corporation that's run by demons, and there are points where that idea is taken to really cool heights, and like really like apocalyptic stuff happens, but then he just kind of, you know, cheapens it by just like making this a way of expressing his sort of like nerdy superior irony, you know, him being better than the material in some kind of a way. And I think that's really the most damning thing you can do as an artist, is like think that you're superior to your own material.
yeah,
You know, it's always supposed to transcend you.
yeah, no, like that's a perfect point too, which also makes this whole idea of fandom being analogous to religion all the more perplexing and kind of pathetic. Because
Yeah.
like people will often talk about you know, superheroes as like, oh no, it's superheroes, I don't take it too seriously, but they also treat it with this like religious reverence,
Mm-hmm.
but how can you
Projection,
take
like
something
psychological
that you
projection.
view in a religious context not seriously?
Yeah.
It kind of defeats the purpose of it, but people will still then treat it like it's religion. It's baffling to me, and it's especially baffling when people will have those kinds of mindsets surrounding comics or their fandom, and try to demonize another fandom as if
Right.
the thing that they are ironically irreverent towards is better than something that they are also irreverent towards. It's weird,
Right.
and I don't
Yeah.
understand that. It's just
Right.
a bizarre thing.
Yeah. And it will, like, the fan wars are hilarious and scary, because I think a lot of this is like, well, okay, so like we haven't talked about Perch. Perch made this really good video like a week ago about like variants, and like I think this is the point a lot of people have made, but like, you know, he used his platform to sort of get this message out to more people, I feel like, and Seven, like the fact that like ratio variants, the fact that like incentive variants are like basically carrying the industry while it's like constantly marketing to children. And you know, you have these comic pros, you know, like Kelly Sue DeConnick saying, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book. And then the industry like collapses, and then she makes another video saying like, I'm really worried about Marvel, blah blah blah. And it's like, well, you did that, but like,
You made this bed. You gotta lie in it now.
you're right, yeah. Like, but like the fact that they're constantly like giving the finger to these like 40-year-old men with disposable incomes, you know, and a lot of like Zach made another video about this. Like, you know, a lot of these men are like divorced. They got a lot of time in their hands. They're nostalgic. They want to, you know, and they buy a lot of comics. They read a lot of comics, and they also trade a lot. And like that's sustaining the industry. And the industry keeps saying like, you know, grow up, like get over it. Superman's gay, like, you know, get over it. Iceman's gay. You know, all these characters. You know, we've rewritten, you know, all this lore. We don't care what it was when you were young. And that sort of coupled with the state of being like a, man in, between 25, 35, in an era where like, prospects are low, people are out of jobs, people are nihilistic and hopeless, and like living in America is like more messed up than it's been in a long time. And like you've got a bunch of like men who probably aren't going to get married, probably aren't going to have children, military age, who are like angry, and like it's like Fight Club, type situation. And you see a lot of that rage spill into these comic book disputes because it's like they've just got all this anger, and like the comic book is like the one thing. It's exactly the same thing with Gamergate. It's like your video game, your outlet. All of a sudden, you've got Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn coming in and saying like you're a sexist because you like shooting at people, or you're a sexist because you like boobs in your Final Fantasy or whatever. And then they start taking that away, and it gets to the most absurd level with this green M&M, discourse. But like. Like you're seeing basically very real problems, very real societal breaking problems spill out into these like corners of the internet and like fandom that should be really banal, but it's totally symptomatic of what's going on with all of us, I think.
No, you're right. And it's interesting you bring up the green M&M in the same context as Zoe Quinn and Gamergate. Because and we talked about this with the whole controversy behind or non-controversy behind the M&M marketing team, and how that whole green M&M stunt is largely kind of a smokescreen for the lawsuit that Nestle and Hershey's and Mars, I think it is, that they're all facing for child slavery. Charges. But you can kind of look at the Gamergate situation in the same way, where people kind of ran with the whole Gamergate's about sexism and gamers hating women, when really that was a smokescreen for the core issue behind Gamergate, which was inherently gamers being upset that IGN kept giving Call of Duty games that were like really bad perfect scores, and corruption and just kind of like lies within games journalism. And Zoe Quinn was kind of a poster child for that, because it kind of came out that she was sleeping with several games journalists and games developers, and that was feeding the problem that gamers were talking about, and then that kind of spiraled into, well, gamers are sexist, and it's like, well, that's not the point. I don't know how we started getting onto this, but I guess that's the debate now. It is very analogous to the green M&M situation, where people are freaking out about the green M&M when really you should be freaking out about Hershey's using child slave labor.
Yeah.
And even same thing with Comicsgate. Comicsgate is a fascinating like little cousin to Gamergate in that sense, where Comicsgate largely started out because I was there when it happened, and I'm sure you were there too. But that whole thing starts with comic book fans being irritated with comics journalism being heavily biased and heavily skewed, and kind of picking sides and not accurately reporting on things, because I felt like a lot of the journalists who were working for these comic outlets were just trying to either get jobs or like kiss up to the right people in other editorial positions. So if they crap on like Marvel or they crap on DC, well then maybe they might get picked up by Valiant or Image. Or maybe if they crap on this editor for that one company who maybe did a bad thing, well, then maybe another editor who did a terrible thing will pick them up.
Yeah.
Because that's who they want to align themselves with professionally. That's what the
Right.
original intent behind Comicsgate was. But then it kind of spiraled into where it is now, where
Yeah.
you have like Geeks and Gamers and like Ethan Van Sciver talking about how, like, you know, just I don't really like talking about it. It just feels like a lot of them are trolling the left, but it's just like right wing, like hyper reaction to the liberal state of comics.
Yeah.
I feel like I word
And there's
vomited a lot, but I hope my point kind of came across.
no, yeah, and I wanted to riff off that like there's enjoyment on both sides now of like the other side losing, the other side getting mad. There's people marketing things. There's another video Perch made was like talking about how, like, the fact that racists don't like your book, it doesn't mean it's a good book. It's
Yeah.
like, but that the fact that that even needs to be said reflects the fact that people are like writing stuff just off of like Twitter, basically responding to stuff on Twitter, responding to Ethan Van Sciver videos, and then being like, let's have a whole X-Men team that is designed to annoy Zach. Let's have let's make Safe Space and what's his name, or what's their name? What were they?
Who?
Snowflake and Safe Space, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then and there's an enjoyment of like, oh, the Nazis are really gonna freak out about this. And then on the Gamergate side, I mean the Comicsgate side, it's the same thing of like, let's make a pro cop book and like let's see how SJWs react to that. And like it's I haven't ever read Cyberfrog, but I appreciate that at least like Ethan Van Sciver is just trying to write Battletoads and like make Battletoads. And it's just not, it's not about anything. It's just like kind of reliving the Jeff Johns Green Lantern era, and he's just trying to just be a good artist. He is a good artist. Like, so, and then his live streams are complete, rage and like,
Yeah.
internet brain mentality. But like at least his comics aren't that. But like, and some Marvel stuff isn't too. Like if you read like the Wastelands stuff, it's just like fun post-apocalyptic stuff. But then you read, Children of the Atom, or you read Thor right now, or any of these comics that are just deliberately like Mjolnir's a woman. Did you know that like actually it's bad to be male? Well, the Hulk can teach you a lesson about toxic masculinity, and it's like that's not why I buy a comic book, but the enjoyment of somebody else being triggered now. That's become an incentive, whereas it was just about the reader enjoying it.
And that's kind of the sad thing, because I think, as Mark Millar put it on Twitter I think he said this last year, his marketing team discovered that less than 10% of the comics buying audience is actually on Twitter and cares about what is going on
so awesome.
On the internet.
That's so awesome. That gives me hope for the human race.
Really, it does. But it's also like depressing for comics in the sense that like
it's just that few people are on Twitter that read comics. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. But it's sad for comics though, because people in the industry are like freaking out about each other.
Yes.
To the point where there will be entire comic lines built around spiting Ethan Van Sciver, or
right,
your boy Zach, or Jason Guy, or whoever. And then like on the flip side, there will be people on the comics side just kind of building entire brands in comics around some stupid thing that like Donny Cates said on like Ethan Van Sciver's live stream or whatever.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, I'm sure the people in your bubble will appreciate this, but like nobody else beyond that cares. So like as an industry whose primary goal is to make money so that the industry can continue healthily, where does this lead?
Right. Yeah, someone made a fan like an edit, like a YouTube like cartoon of your boy Zach doing stand up comedy, and they played it on a like it was a your boy Zach video, but it was like, what if your boy Zach was a stand up comedian? And Ethan Van Sciver played it on his live stream, and people in the comments were saying like, "Oh yeah, we should totally like, this would work so well as an Adult Swim show." And it's like, yeah, but like only 5 people get the references to this. Like, nobody knows what the hell y'all are talking about. So
Yeah.
like it wouldn't really work too well as an Adult Swim show. But yeah, it's a very small group of people that are like freaking out about these tiny little issues. But I think there's a parallel with like what's going on with like Russia,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on with fans on both sides of this like Comicsgate issue, and what's going on with like different, liberal conservative issues, which is like, people are sending messages to the other side with like their demands basically,
Mm-hmm.
and they're basically saying like this is especially terrible on the sort of woke side, is like people are just saying like, you should just do better, man, like you're racist, you should stop being racist. And it's like, you there, that's not really an ask, like that isn't really, like, you're not giving them any incentive to change, you're just like constantly scolding the other side for being how they are. And then the right's response is just sort of like turning them into lolcows and just sort of making fun of how cringe they are. But they obviously aren't cringe within their own circles. So basically, like, both sides are these bubbles that are like sending messages to themselves about how absurd the other side has become. And it's like there isn't any like real coming to the, bringing everybody to the table to actually talk things through, other than like a Vouch style like shouting match,
Yeah.
about these issues. They're not really having it's not really Twitter is like a simulation of a conversation. It's not really a conversation. It's like a roast.
You have to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah, like,
but
well,
no,
you're not going to wake up, but if you haven't, like, it's like, I mean, the imported Chinese delicacy debate, it's, if you haven't taken the sacrament, if you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
by this point, you probably aren't going to. So you probably, like, having Rachel Maddow shame you for like denying science or whatever probably isn't going to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like that's the mentality. If we just get louder, they'll eventually have to listen to us. And it's like, no, they won't. They'll just get more angry.
It doesn't fix anything, because it just kind of becomes a situation of finger pointing when the while the bomb is going off.
Right,
it doesn't
right,
matter
yeah.
who like you're pointing your finger at. Like, you're still gonna die. It doesn't matter.
Right. Dude,
but,
I mean, look at this Russia stuff. Like, they're
Yeah.
saying like, well, if you bring these troops in, we're gonna say Putin's a naughty man. It's like, Putin knows he's a naughty man. That's why he's doing it.
Exactly.
Like, he doesn't care what you think on MSNBC. Like, would you petition like Dr. Doom? These people hate Ethan Van Sciver to the point where they call him like evil Von whatever. If he was Dr. Doom, would you just like try to cancel Dr. Doom? Would that be the solution? Like, they act like that's gonna fix this. If they just cancel enough people, there will be no more racism.
Well,
or
according to
whatever.
Tom Taylor, that works.
Right.
Son of Kal-El.
Oh, did he? I'm sorry, I'm not following this book at all.
Dude, I tried, because I had a very like glass half full kind of mentality. I try to have a very glass half full mentality when it comes to comics. But Jesus, dude, it's so bizarre. Like, that book kind of comes out the gate swinging. Like, no, Superman sucks because he's not liberal enough and he doesn't do the right things. But then you have John Kent, who's like the hyper liberal because he marches with people for climate change, like Justin Trudeau, which is bizarre in and of itself, and parodic.
Justin Trudeau, great man.
Then like you actually see what John does to affect change, and it's just him being like a Twitter twink where he's just clapping that Lex Luthor tripped over his shoelaces, or like, oh, this politician who's a naughty boy, he got canceled on Twitter, and that's I took a picture and it got like 4 million likes and retweets. That's like literally the whole point of that book.
So bizarre though, it's like every time I open Dark Ages, dude, I'm so I guess like in denial because every time I open Dark Ages, I somehow forget that he wrote the same book.
Yeah,
like he's somehow writing just like good, Marvel alternate reality stuff. At the same time that he's writing this like completely insane Superman story. That's just like, completely insane. Like, what the fuck are you doing? But he wrote Deceased and he wrote Injustice. Like, he's got a wide range of what he can do as an artist. He's just he's going the money route, I guess. But
it's not making money.
It's not making money. They're probably paying him okay, but it's not. Yeah, it's gonna get canceled. Or they're gonna not retcon, but Well, let's see what happens when they kill the Justice League.
Yeah, let's see what happens with that. But no, it's bizarre and interesting to watch. Damn, I had a point when you brought up the Tom Taylor Dark Ages book.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right, okay. So before that, when you bring up Russia and Putin, my mind immediately kind of went to the Mujahideen and the CIA, where, and tying this back to the John Kent book. And really, a lot of the hyper liberal, we're gonna own, Fox News and like my racist dad and uncle who like don't care about comics, but like ideologically, I'm gonna own them in the pages of the book that like no one's reading. I think it's weird how a lot of the Comicsgate stuff, as it is now, whereas the whole like go woke, go broke kind of thing. A lot of that started as like a reaction to Western liberal sanctimony.
Yeah.
And in like a weird kind of way, and like my mind's fresh on 9/11 and like the Mujahideen and all that, because I just did like a report on that last semester for my history class. But
cool.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's weird how the U.S. kind of like 9/11's kind of the U.S.'s fault because Reagan and George H.W. didn't. So their whole goal was to train the Mujahideen to essentially bankrupt the Soviet Union and wasting all of their resources in trying to capture Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And then we saw how that turned out about 20 years later. Or I guess 15 years later, more accurately. But, flash forward to like 2001 and 2002, when the mentality that a lot of people in the U.S. have is, well, just turn the Middle East to glass because they're the bad guys and they're the supervillains and blah, 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 completely ignoring the fact that that was a monster of the U.S.'s own creation.
Yeah, and like the whole like just to develop that a little bit, like the whole way that we see the Middle East as like this huge, hotbed of extremism. Like we created that through our support of Israel, through basically eliminating the left in the Middle East, through through like basically having a soft coup in Iran and installing like a U.S. puppet. Through what we did in Syria, just everywhere, pretty much, we destroyed any sort of like left movement, destroyed any opposition to Israel that was secular, and basically we just created all this chaos, and what filled the void was radical Muslim extremism, both like Sunni and Shiite, and that's we completely ruined that part of the world.
Yeah.
you know. And then like Afghanistan is just the most extreme version of it, where we like literally created like a terrorist organization that then attacked us. But it's like, we kind of have been waging a crusade against the Middle East for a very long time, and it's gotten to this point where now they're able to hit us back.
Mm-hmm. And that's the scary part. Um, and in a micro sense, looking at comics, it's
Mm-hmm.
strikingly similar to how uh, you have all of these creators working at Marvel and DC and like Boom Studios and all that, and like the indies, um, and they're kind of seen as like the good guys. And I guess like to compare this the comic situation to like the U.S. and the Middle East, the
Yeah.
U.S. is very much the big publishers, um,
Mm-hmm.
and the big publishers kind of created Comics as it is right now, with the whole like Cyber Frog and like Jawbreakers, Lost Souls, and all that. When like the big the Indiegogo boom for
Yeah.
comics development, and how that also kind of inadvertently, or not inadvertently, but like it led to a more liberal version of that with like comic stacks, not comic stacks. What's the OnlyFans one? Uh, uh,
Are you talking about
Substack.
you're talking about Substack, are you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So like the big publishers kind of created uh, their own like mujahideen in the Middle East,
Yeah.
which which is like uh, what
Yeah.
be it intentionally or like unintentionally waging war against the big publishers. Um, you know, a lot of this like Indiegogo stuff and Substack stuff it's gunning after like Marvel and DC and like Boom and Image, and all like the traditional
Right.
publishers. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, it kind of started when they started gunning after these nobodies on like the internet that like nobody cared about.
Yeah, they turned them into Al Qaeda. They turned them into
Yeah,
like, it's such a self-own, because they're just like, they're basically saying like, there's nothing interesting happening here. Like, we don't have any world builders or anybody who cares about any of these IPs at all anymore. So we're going to focus on these people that want to destroy us because they think that our politics are bad. And you agree with us, so you should want to destroy them too. And like, basically, if you're so focused on Ethan Van Sciver, you're not building, the Krakoan X-Men era or some, and like all the people that can, do that kind of real world building, however much we might be critical of them, but like, people like Tom King, Jonathan Hickman, Scott Snyder, James Tynion. Except for Tom King, all those people seem to be getting pushed out. And Tom King seems to have found this weird niche where he's just doing like really irrelevant Black Label stuff for
yeah,
DC. But like other than that, it's like they're all being pushed out, and if somebody like Hickman builds a world for them, they're told, well, we're gonna wokeify this and we're gonna give it to a bunch of people who don't cost as much to employ, and like basically aren't as talented as you, but we don't really care about your talent anymore. But like you can write a book, you can write Moon Knight or something, but like
mm-hmm.
we're not gonna like invest in you anymore. And that's what's really tragic, is because like we love the continuity of these universes, and we're just watching them like get ripped apart before our eyes.
Yeah, and it's sad because there's no fruit in these like petty vendettas that it feels like the people who are steering the ship are more interested in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. It's depressing.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know, that tribal mentality. I just don't like. I know how it starts. I know where it starts. I know where it comes from. Because comics have
Right.
always kind of been that way,
Yeah.
in a sense. But to see it on like a corporate level,
Mm-hmm.
now that like the curtain is kind of completely ripped down because of social media. We can kind of like see how the sausage is made in a sense.
Yeah.
It all just feels very petty and silly and depressing. That like
That's actually one of the most disturbing things about the curtain falling is like people being like Kevin Feige is God, you know?
yeah.
Like you were making fun of, you know?
Yeah, oh Jesus, yeah, no,
You know,
but like,
like
and it's funny though because I can, okay, I was gonna say I can tolerate that more so than like what's going on in a corporate level, but like I'm not sure I can. I think it's both. I think they're like equally egregious, but for different reasons. But what you were bringing up, where like, no, Kevin Feige's Jesus, and the DC movies in the comics, there's the devil because my religion's surrounded around Marvel. That's very cringe. That's just cringe.
it's
and pathetic.
super cringe.
Huh?
And like you didn't talk about them that I mean they talked about Stan Lee and shit, but like you know it's not the same when you're talking about like a suit, like a corporate suit like Feige. You know, it's like you might as well worship Bill Gates, and people do, and that's also gross. You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, like yes, he is like doing something creatively, but you know he's basically like just like the boss, like you know who's kind of. You know, I mean, he's the Mickey Mouse dude. Like he's Mickey Mouse's like puppet, basically. Like nobody should worship that. You know,
But they do.
yeah,
They worship it real hard. It's creepy too. It's very creepy.
dude.
And it's weird how for I forgot where I heard this. But I thought it was a great line, so I'm stealing it and saying that I did it. This is my Bob Kane moment, by the way. I'm stealing from something that somebody worked really hard on, probably. One man's God is another man's devil.
Right. Oh, totally.
And taking that idea and taking that mindset into a realm of commercialism and like commercialist interests,
Yeah.
that's creepy and scary and pathetic and sad.
Yeah.
Because you'll see like grown men, and I think I told you about this, like just 40, 50-year-old men with like children coming into like a comic book store and saying just weird nonsense like, do you know why Marvel is better than DC? Well, it's because Youngblood. Let me educate you. It's because Superman and Batman, you know, they can only be white men. But like Luke Cage and Misty Knight, you know, that's a Puerto Rican. You know, that's an Asian. They can be any color. It's like, dude, what? But like they're so wrapped up in that like ideology of Marvel good, DC bad, and the devil and terrible, and I hate it. That
Right.
they don't quite hear themselves. Like all self-awareness is kind of gone.
Totally. No, yeah, and they're basically trapped in this weird fantasy where like Loki is like this guy at the next cubicle, and they're Thor, and they're fighting. You know, they're fighting over fucking Asgard when really it's like they're fighting over TPS reports, and you know,
Yeah.
like they're like quarterly summaries and stuff like that. The most banal stuff you can think of is being elevated to this like epic scale. Because it is a corporate religion. It's a religion to turn all the banality of life into something like marvelous and epic. And you know, it should do that to a certain degree, but it's also like I feel like the early 2000s, like the Ultimates, all of that stuff was about like criticizing some of this shit. Criticizing some of this imperialism and corporatism and like the sort of evils of American life, while also, you know, providing some escape. But now it's like we're just escaping and we're just glorifying and like we're the good guys and we are, you know, we're with Black Panther or whatever and they're Killmonger and like
Yeah.
you know, it was about create like the Vertigo era was about creating awareness. Now it's about like destroying that awareness and like reducing it down to a simple good and evil fight where like the bad guys are in Comicsgate. the bad guys hate your comics and we love you because you support Black Lives Matter or whatever
Yeah.
issue where whatever issue like Amazon and Google have on their like home screens this month, that is the issue we support. And if you're not with us, you're against us, like Bush era style rhetoric.
Yeah. It's scary and bizarre, man. And it's scary how people will like latch on to like corporate products as like, well, not just a religion, but like also like, well I don't want to get into like Satanism because that's just gonna rot my brain.
Get into Satanism, please do. No, that's a wonderful subject. Go off, King.
All right, I'll dip my toe and just kind of like stride across it, but because I had like debates with that in my philosophy courses and just like in general. Oh no, yeah, but I think it's fascinating how in taking it to Marvel and DC, movies, comics, whatever, people will kind of build whole ideologies around being the antithesis of something that they don't like.
Right.
Which is not very fruitful, in my opinion, at the very least.
The anti-life equation.
Yeah. Which is why Darkseid is the villain. So, like, which I don't even know why we have to, like, say that out loud now, but, it's just bizarre because, granted, I like the Zack Snyder movies and stuff like that. I think those are pretty fun. But there's a lot of people who are like in that die-hard like Snyder cult who are they very much took the Snyder vision in the DC and like the Warner Brothers vision as that kind of world was being built as, well, no, this is the anti-Marvel, so therefore it's good because it's against the other thing. Like we're diametrically opposed to them. And so many people like rallied around that, and they focused only on, well, no, it's good because it's not like the other thing. Okay, well that's cool, but like,
it's weird
also, what do you like about it?
And Comicsgate exists,
huh?
Like it's weird that you have that anti-Marvel, and then you also have Comicsgate being anti-Marvel.
Yeah.
And neither of them like each other. It seems like
no, it's funny because they're the Snyder cult is like the anti-Feige ideology, but also they're inherently anti-Comicsgate mentality because they see themselves as like the hyper-liberal thing, whereas like Marvel's liberal. Marvel's a liberal thing to an extent. It's commercially liberal, although in some of its like stories, it feels very conservative and like pro-imperialism in a sense, which is like bizarre considering it's based on the Ultimates largely, and the Ultimates was like against all that stuff. But no, it's just weird that people rally behind a lot of these like popcorn movies as like, no, this is I like this religion because it is a religion that is opposed to your religion. Like it's that hater mentality, which I think is like funny and weird.
Totally.
But no, it's just weird. Everything just feels like a reaction to something else, and because everything's like a hyper reaction to like something else, self-awareness just kind of goes out the window.
Dude, that Curio video, did you ever watch that Curio video?
I can't do it, I'm sorry.
Huh?
I couldn't do it, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. It's all good. No,
I think I watched the one
dude,
with that
you haven't ascended. You haven't ascended to my level of masochism.
Was it the Cyberpunk one? Because I saw, like, you showed me a clip from that, and I was like, Jesus, I can't do this.
That one's really terrible, but I'm talking about the one where he talks about how Zack Snyder and Frank Miller are fascists.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, you know, the whole thing about Ayn Rand and everything, but like he it's just like you can kind of get this. I mean, like I don't even know if he's a Marvel dude or not, but like yeah,
I don't know either.
But it's this whole like just every single thing he's taking it and turning it into this like allegory for like Nazis good in some kind of way. Like in every comic by Frank Miller and every movie by Zack Snyder, the zombies are actually the masses, and the masses are all these like these gross diseased fools who like, you know, need to be brought to heal by the great dictator or whatever. You know, like he's just projecting all this stuff onto this stuff, and it's like, dude, Zack Snyder just makes fun movies. You know, he doesn't. He's not just. I mean, I do kind of read into Batman v Superman in some ways. I do think there's a lot of like ideological content there, but like it's easy to just shrug off as like he's just trying to be relevant. You know, he talks about the Russians, he talks about the government, all that sort of stuff to make it timely. You know, the same reason he has Neil deGrasse Tyson in it. You know,
he even puts in like the cringe like Twitter. I mean, the point of the movie is a cringe Twitter thread where Superman is mad at Batman because Batman beats up poor people.
Right.
He's a rich guy who beats up poor people.
Right. Yeah, I think that was like the closest to a kind of like what Civil War was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, like that we're gonna get in like a modern superhero movie, because the politics are so stupid now. The politics are so like, this is the Trump character, this is the Biden character, this is the Hillary character. Now they're gonna fight. Yeah. Like you can't have like, you know, there was some depth to Batman and to Superman in that kind of dumb movie. Like you know, Batman is, you know, kind of struggling with his limits, and the fact that he's kind of failed, and that Robin died, and the Joker kind of he's been Jokerfied. It's Jokerfied Batman. Yeah. You know, he's like black pilled Batman, and then this like sun god shows up and is just like perfect, and it's sort of like Gotham versus Metropolis. You know, he's like, I've got to drag him down to my level and like, you know, make him a human. And make him flawed and vulnerable like that. It has interesting themes. I think the execution is like all over the place, yeah. But it's an interesting movie. It's an interesting movie, and like you can't say that about most of these Marvel movies. They're like Thor 2 is not interesting. Yeah. You know, it's like
yeah, and I think
like what you know.
That's kind of the sad part where, for all the faults that the DC movies have, at least I think they are interesting to watch, or the older ones at least. The newer ones just kind of feel like they're going the more Marvel route, where it's just make popcorn to, you know, just let people enjoy, which is also fine too. I'm not like dragging that. I just don't personally think that's interesting because I grew up reading comic books, and I'm kind of if I want to see that kind of story, I'll just buy like a $20 trade from like the Silver Age and read those stories.
Right.
But
yeah.
The DC movies, they were kind of going this like this really interesting direction where, like you said, the execution was all over the place, but they had interesting ideas. But yeah, no, it's weird when you look at some of the other stuff from Marvel that also tries to have ideas and stuff, like Falcon, Winter Soldier, and Captain America, Winter Soldier. Where those films are kind of like a commentary on imperialism and freedom versus security, but they do it in such a trivial way where it's like, yeah, well, America's not inherently racist. It's just Nazis. It's Hydra. It's bad. That's the bad thing. And after Captain America punches them, well, then it goes away. Or like in like Falcon Winter Soldier, which I haven't seen all the way.
Me either.
But
I got tired.
Based off what a few of some of our mutual buddies have said, and like clips that I've seen on YouTube, it kind of feels like it's Winter Soldier again, or it feels like the Captain America Winter Soldier movie again, where it's all about how a black man can't be Captain America because America's racist. But then,
Right.
Falcon puts on the Captain America costume and he's like, actually, you're wrong, and America's not bad. The leaders just have to do better. And it's like, what? Well, that's not how things work. Because you kind of alleviate the nuances of the problems that are being faced and like why you're in the situation you're in. But all right, I guess.
Yeah, the nuance is like, and that's what's sort of tragic is like, comics are, a lot of comics are dumb. A lot of comics don't really have nuance, but like, you can't really, those comics shouldn't try to address like the Middle East crisis or something. It's like they should, if you're gonna write you shouldn't write about like Whirlwind and the Middle East crisis, or like, I'm trying to think of a dumb Silver Age villain. Starro. Actually, that's a pretty good job of Starro and American imperialism in the same movie. But typically, you can't do that. You can't make like a dumb story that's addressing like these big, profound issues. But like the way that people are projecting onto these, like to me, the big danger of this is that they make people think in a way that's more simple and make it like easier for them to kind of basically reinforce the evils of the world.
Yeah.
Like that these things could challenge some of this stuff, and the people that are doing like this is the banality of evil. You've got like people sitting at desks making decisions that lead to massive death and like invasions of other countries and terrorism and drug trafficking and sex trafficking, all this shit. And this is some dude behind a desk, and that dude behind a desk watches Marvel movies,
Yeah.
And like the Marvel movies are making him think that what he's doing, he's actually good because Hydra bad, and like versus like, hey, maybe we're the baddies. Like we're the baddies. Like that's like that is the sin. You cannot ever say that in these fucking movies. You can't bring up that maybe we're the baddies. It paints this kind of elaborate picture in which like we're flawed, but we're human, and we're ultimately trying to do the right thing. But AIM is out there, Spectre and Smersh and the KGB or whatever is out there doing all these nefarious things. But like we're on the good side, and we have souls, and they don't have souls. It's like a kind of like metaphysical, good versus evil struggle. And as long as you're watching the right movie, as long as you're the right kind of fan, you're good. That's the religion. That's where it's like a really dark religion.
And it's scary. Just even like hearing you say that is. Like, these are things that we think about a lot, or like you and me think about a lot, but just whenever it's like verbalized, it's the weight of that just kind of smacks you in the face like a brick.
Yeah.
And again, it's funny that you kind of brought up Ultimates in comparison to the MCU, because Ultimates is basically an inversion of the MCU.
That also became the MCU.
Huh?
Yeah. That also was like the primary like resource they mined to get the MCU.
Weird. Like, because you look at like again, Age of Ultron. That's a movie where like these yuppie American like costumed militants charge into a foreign nation and just kind of force their will on the people there, and it's fine. It's all good. Because they're the Avengers. But like you look at the Ultimates and it's like, well, that's like the way Mark Millar kind of handled that. Even though it doesn't use Hydra in either of those the stories that he does for Ultimates and Ultimates 2. Ultimately, it's kind of that thing with the Liberators, where is KGB bad? Yeah. Is China's version of their secret thing bad? Yeah. but does
Right.
Shield and the CIA also do terrible things that are equally bad? Yeah.
Right.
Maybe it's not a matter of like good versus evil. Maybe it's more. Maybe the problem is more so steeped in superpower-seeking imperialism and just kind of treating all these other countries, like these underdeveloped nations, these third world countries, and the people in them like pieces on a chessboard.
Yeah.
You know, it's that thing that Henry Kissinger used to talk about in the 70s, realpolitik.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And like there's and that's why I love Ultimates 2 so much, because there's a hyper self-awareness in what Mark Millar and Brian Hitch were doing, that you look at like superhero movies and largely that's not really there.
Yeah.
I think the closest we ever kind of got to it in modern times is maybe BVS, but again the execution is kind of like all over the place in that movie, and kind of memeable, but again it's, I don't know, it really kind of, it's bizarre. It's bizarre that like these hyper political stories are like used as the framework for these movies, and these movies just kind of boil them down to, well, actually, American imperialism good.
Right.
It's like, oh, there's more nuance there. Thank you that, you know, you're that like Shield is stopping America from being invaded by like Chinese aliens from like outer space or whatever. Or like, you know, North Koreans from the Black Lagoon or whatever, but like also Nick Fury is like a bastard who like will murder children in the name of
I playing the Avengers game earlier today, and it was like it just sort of hit me. I was like, this is exactly this, like aesthetically the base, the Avengers base, you know, is basically aesthetically the same as like one of those Army of One or Be All You Can Be, you know, join the army commercials from like the early 2000s and like late 90s. It's like the same. It's like straight up like military propaganda type shit, and like and like this is, you know, that's kind of what the Avengers are. They're kind of just like the American military, but superheroes, and like, that, you know, theoretically that isn't what, you know, there's been a lot of efforts to write them where they're not that, but somehow we end up back there, and now it's like we need to write them like, you know, Team America World Police, but also woke. Like that's basically the politics we're at now, as opposed to like, maybe Team America World Police isn't a good idea.
Yeah.
You know,
but maybe it's kind of rehashing the Ultimates, and I think Grant Morrison said this on Kevin Smith's podcast a couple years ago, where post 9/11 everyone's kind of trying to chase that Ultimates high, because America was traumatized by 9/11. So we kind of turned all of our superheroes into Rambo and like, you know, all these like like go kill the foreign invaders, and they're bad and the hero's good because America right. Don't look at like how this conflict started. Just go kill. And in a way, that's how we end up with, you know, superhero movies that feel like Starship Troopers but directed by Michael Bay, or even like, you know, comic books that feel like that. Because we in America we still have this cultural like ideology that dictates that we are the underdogs, and because we're the underdogs, we have to overcome.
Right.
Because that goes back to how this nation was founded. It was founded by underdogs, largely, mostly rich people who were like mad about being taxed by by King George. But America's a nation founded by like these underdog colonialists. So that like idea of, you know, the American superhero being the underdog fighting these tyrannical leaders and these monsters that kind of like dwarf the common man's might. So have it. That's where a lot of that comes from. But
yeah.
What happens when we are the tyrannical might? What happens when we are the big dog? What happens when we are King George?
Yeah. Well, this whole like Ukraine Russia thing is like a really good example of that, because it's like we're basically like, we want that pipeline, and Putin's like, we want that pipeline, and then we're like, you're destroying democracy. It's like, that's not what it's about, though. It's about a pipeline. It's about like power struggles and geopolitics just neutralizes all that stuff, and then we throw a smoke screen over it and say that it's about democracy, and pretend for a minute that Ukraine isn't just run by oligarchs, and it's just a question of which oligarchs are going to run it. Pretend we're not run by oligarchs. Damn. Like, we're like, everywhere you go in pretty much the world, it's just rich dudes like running everything. But we can use all these like lofty terms like democracy to kind of neutralize that. But it's to not neutralize, like the opposite, to like basically make it more complicated than it is. Make it like these are actually we're fighting for all these values, and they're just fighting for their own greed. It's like, no, we're all fighting for our own greed. Like that's what it is.
How does it feel to live in a world written by Garth Ennis?
Right. Yeah. Totally,
yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. But yeah. Holy crap, we've been going for like an hour and 30 minutes.
We have. Are you looking forward to Garth Ennis's comic about the Ukrainian war that's about to start?
Fuck yes. Wait. Yeah. Oh yeah. I thought you were making a Peacemaker joke, but yeah, that will inevitably.
Oh, I watched the first one last night. It's good.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought you were making a joke about the Peacemaker comic that he's gonna do, which comes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He is. That's gonna be dope.
This like later this week.
Okay.
But yeah, no. It's weird. The show is weird, but I like it so far.
The first nude scene we've seen in a comic book movie, I think, right?
Wait, which one?
Wasn't that the first nude scene we've seen in a comic book movie?
No, I'm pretty sure in BVS you see Ben Affleck's like whole bare ass in the shower.
Oh.
Yeah.
I forgot that part. I wonder why.
I remember that because I saw I was part of the test screening for the Ultimate Edition.
Oh, nice.
At one of the more hoity-toity movie theaters in the downtown area of the DMV, and
uptown or uptown?
Downtown.
I mean the Uptown Theater?
No, not the Uptown Theater.
Oh, okay.
I think it might have been the East Street Theater.
East Street, that's a cool theater. Yeah.
They held a screening for the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman,
nice.
and there's a lot of stuff in there. I was like, well, this is definitely not how this movie went when I saw this in the theaters the first time. First of all, the story makes sense, but second of all,
I guess what I meant was you saw the first boobs in a superhero movie in Peacemaker.
Yeah, I think you see boobs in Blade.
Oh, do you?
I think so.
Damn. So it's all the way back to the... Yeah, that's interesting.
Maybe. There's also like Howard the Duck, too.
Oh, true.
Back when like movies that were rated PG could like have boobs. It was weird.
Right.
Back before the MPAA cared.
Right.
But yeah, no, dude, thanks for coming on the show. It was great to talk to you.
Oh yeah, dude, thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, man. Where can the people find you?
Oh yeah, Instagram, JackJenocide with the J in the Jack and J in Genocide. Yeah.
Perfect. Definitely. Yeah. I think I have it in the screen just right up here for you guys. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. This is great. This is like a long time coming. Like, I've been wanting to do like collab with JackJenocide for a long time. Actually, we have collab before. We've done some stuff with on your Instagram, on Instagram Live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. we talked about
The
how we hated
WandaVision
WandaVision,
stream.
and then like I changed my mind halfway through because I was like, yeah, it's fine.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, dude, thanks, man. Thanks for coming on.
All right, bro.
All right.
It's good talking.
And thanks, guys. If you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel. And if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe and go check out JackJenocide on Instagram. So that's the show. That's the video. Yeah. As always, until next time. Adios, nachos. Adios.